Okay, I lightly reviewed this one before we sat down, and it's really long, so we're not going to be able to get real detailed into it, but there's so many things happening here. And I'm just going to let you start out. Just go ahead and let us know what the date is and everything, and everybody will just give our opinions. And, you know, just because we have an opinion doesn't mean it's exact science here either. So we're just trying to, you know, play this back and forth off each other and you know, learn as we go.
Yeah, so this is footage from November 15th, Iowa. Rod's filming, I think Bridger, his buddy is the hunter. I know when they filmed back with each other a few years back, Bridger shot the buck named Scandal. We did a hunt breakdown on that too. Anybody that's interested can go watch the hunt called Scandal. Pretty sweet footage actually. So that makes sense on what they're doing here. They're probably hunting for the buck named Scandal, a really mature buck, and then they have this really cool encounter where they got 3 bucks come in with a doe, and we'll kind of break down what happens here, age structure, some of the things we see visually with the deer, and we'll just kind of, it's a really, really cool hunt. Hunt that you don't forget because you have all these bucks within bow range, and yeah, we'll just start breaking it down.
Let's set that up real quick. So November 15th, you said in Iowa. So this is about the time based on geographical location. In there, the first doe should be starting to come into estrus. So whenever you get to that point in the year, and we always wait for it, and it's always in Minnesota, it's always right when the gun season is going to start. So we get like a tiny little window when we can possibly experience this. Sometimes we don't get to experience it because the weather doesn't cooperate and the gun season comes in early. But there's a window when them first does start coming in, and it's like a 2-3 day deal, and every buck in the world is trying to find that doe, because they've been all revved up and prepped up for it, and all of a sudden, boom, she's here. And that's what's, in my opinion, after I watched this the first time, is what this scenario is.
Yeah, and we'll start in. And one more comment on that. I know when we hunt Minnesota, Wisconsin, especially Wisconsin, I got a real specific date on like when November 8th, 9th, 10th hits.
Yeah.
Like that's lockdown, and I won't see a mature buck for like 7-8 days. If you shift that back to Iowa, a more southern location, we're getting into right about when that lockdown starts, like you said, so peak rut. And that's kind of this scenario happening here. But there's a lot of deer walking around, so maybe, you know, it's maybe dependent on each section of woods in each location, but that's the timing of this clip here, heading into peak rut. Chris, what do you think when you see this deer behind a tree? You can't see his rack. What are your first initial thoughts? Or does he have a rack?
Did you just give it away? No.
Camera swings.
Camera swings.
And what are your thoughts there?
He looks thicker from what I can tell. But I could see was the rear end of that one. It looked thin.
Are you trying to compare the two?
Yeah.
Or that's where your mind is? So if you're thinking like, oh, which deer would I want to shoot? So that's where your first mindset comes in?
That, or like how are they going to interact too? Like, do I got a little bit more mature one, but they're close in age, and the one's going to want to come in and push them out, and are they going to start scrapping? Or so maybe that's what I was kind of thinking.
Okay, yeah. That's actually going to play out. So
one thing that I kind of noticed, and I had never thought about it until now, is the first deer, which I know was a buck, was staring. He wasn't moving.
Right.
Seems like the more immature, less dominant deer are always watching the more mature deer. So he's looking over, can use his visuals to then pick up, okay, there's probably another deer coming. You look over, this deer has really no care in the world of that other buck. I would immediately say 4-year-old buck.
Yeah,
that's my initial thought. I just look over, 4-year-old buck, 140.
I wasn't aging at all, but I was looking at dominance. Once again, the communication factor, and exactly what you said. The one behind the tree was locked. He wasn't trying to make a presence, where that one was definitely making a presence. So that tells me whether, no matter what age they are, one was more mentally dominant than the other.
Yep, and he's not tearing up the scrape mad. He's
Yeah, look at
solely on scent.
Look at that neck. I mean, that's a wedge, man.
Like if you watch when he walks here, he's not going to look around. He's focused on, can he pick up a hot doe scent. He's not going to look at the other deer. He's looking for a doe, licking his lips, trying to gain. He's 100% scent focused.
I saw
and
the
you
belly.
go back to this other deer, just completely different. And this camera's moving quite a bit, so it's tough.
But I'm seeing the belly on him now. I see where you're saying 4.5, because I was thinking 3.5, but until now you said that, now I see the little belly, that little loopy belly in there.
Yeah, he's kind of has a little belly, but it's not anything that screams ultra mature.
Right.
And there's a third buck that enters here, and it's kind of cool. When I first watched this clip, I thought this buck was 4. The other buck was maybe a stud 2-year-old.
See,
Could have been 3.
If you pause that for a second, I was looking at this deer when he was walking across there, the more dominant one, not this one, but the other one. I was looking at his mouth.
This one here?
No, the other one that just went away, the more dominant. I was looking at his mouth, and it's open, and his tongue's kind of hanging, and he's licking his nose. And this is all about, I have got to find something's here, and I'm looking for it, and I can't find it, and I'm frustrated, and I got my head down. Then I pick it up, then I lick my nose, and I do it again. And this is going on, and he's kind of doing circles. It's not like he's going from one place to another. He's trying to figure out where is this? Where are you? And even the other bucks around him, he could care less about them. You know what I mean? So that tells me this is absolutely a hot doe came through here, and he's trying to pick it up, and he's trying to figure out where the heck is she. Because the other thing you got to think about when them does come in hot, they don't like being dogged, because every freaking buck in the world is going to dog them once they're delivering that estrus. So they hide. They hunker down into thick areas. They don't want to be, they're not out prancing around, look at me, I'm ready to go. That doesn't work that way. And that's why these guys are working so hard to figure out where she is. So that's where my brain is, and especially this time of the year. You know, there absolutely could be a hot doe there, whether it's one of the first ones or what. The reason I think it's more one of the first ones is because they are so tolerant and they are so grouped up together. If there's a bunch of does going in estrus deeper into the rut part, they're more spread out. You know what I mean? And that's where my brain was, is on this, why I think this is an early doe. This is that first window. So that's my thought.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff's happening, and the camera's flinging around, and the footage at times is a little bit confusing, but...
The third deer?
Yeah, so this is the third deer that just enters. Kind of some cool things you notice right away visually on the deer is a bright white rack. I got some thoughts on that. I also see the tarsal glands are hardly even dark at all, so he's not peeing on his tarsals. He's not really getting too aggressive or too involved in a lot of scraping and a lot of laying down scent and just a lot of things. I think this is a 3-year-old buck. He just kind of looks middle of the road, no gut, but not thin. You can tell if you took his rack off, it doesn't look like a doe, so it's not like a 2-year-old. And then the real white rack, something that's kind of cool about that, which is rare we don't see that around here, but usually when they have white racks, they're not in areas with like pine trees or trees where they get sap on the rack, because that's what turns them dark, or a swampy area where they're just in there, rubbing on all these different really wet trees and things like that and staying moist. So this, I would say outside of this timber environment, it's got to be pretty dry. There's probably open fields, CRP's probably just hanging out in the sun a lot. It's getting bleached out, which is cool because then the racks just pop off the background really nice. But yeah, I think 3-year-old buck comes in. Looking back at that other deer first year, I'm thinking he might be a 3-year-old too, but I can't tell. I haven't seen enough footage.
I think he separates himself when this will get a little further.
Nice buck right there, but
yeah.
And then another deer ran there, so then you can see his demeanor changes to where he's
what happened?
Thinking everything's great. I'm following. Maybe he sees a doe. Maybe he's looking at other bucks. Now he's kind of spooky. He put his nose in the air trying to smell.
Yeah, look at his
tail's
tail.
up. That other gland was actually darker.
That spooked him a little bit. That gave him some anxiety, didn't it?
Yeah, so it makes you wonder, did the cameraman spook a deer?
Oh, you know what?
Or what happened?
Well, maybe or maybe not. Maybe he caught a little bit of wind or he caught something on the ground. That could be it, yeah.
There's a fourth deer there. There's a deer here that we haven't seen yet, though, that just ran.
Now this guy here is doing the same thing as the first one. And he's got his nose to the ground. Once again, he's looking for that scent. There's that one scent. He's looking for it.
And now here's the deer that shows up. That's number 4. So there's your doe.
And he's pushing the doe. Now, in my opinion, that doe's not an estrus. That's not the one that laid the scent down. Now, I may be wrong, but if it was, he would be acting a little different and the other bucks would be on top of it. You know what I'm saying? That doe just came in late. That hot doe came in before this all happened.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that first mature buck, that what I would think was a 4-year-old right away, would be on top of this doe and not let this, what I think is a 3-year-old, kind of take control.
Yeah, he wouldn't tolerate it.
But yeah, a lot of stuff going on. She just walked where that older buck, that 4-year-old buck that I call 4-year-old buck, walked a little bit ago. So you would think, yeah, he would have circled back and been right on her.
And she doesn't seem to be behaving like she's in heat. She's like, you know,
maybe she's already.
Maybe she's already bred
already
or something.
bred.
I don't know. But she's just kind of strolling, you know, where they'll lay down, you know, and they'll sit down when the buck will come up. And I've actually seen the bucks come up, and maybe we can get some footage like that, where they like nudge them with their nose and do like that roar sound, that roar, just to get them to pop up so they can, you know, keep it moving because they want to. He's not going to stop and play around there and do that kind of stuff if she's in estrus. That ain't going to happen.
No.
He'd be only on her.
She could be gone by now.
Yeah.
And he'd lose her. And he's smelling right now, and he's not, I don't know.
And she wasn't running away from him either. She was just, you know, just traipsing, so.
He's going to follow her, I think.
Now that's a tail lift like he was going to pee on himself, I assume. Well, how did you take that? Because I've never really paid a lot of attention to the buck's tails. They tend to be straight out more, like you said. But when he lifts it, what's he doing? Trying to lay a little scent out there, or was he just taking a dump?
Yeah, it's just something that they do when they're following does. They always just have their tail straight out. And not even following does, just kind of walking around, letting other deer know they're around. It's not a flag, but it's a visual cue.
I'm over here.
There's that first buck. I don't know if he's 2 or 3. He's got a decent rack, but that's just deceiving when you...
Is that the first one or the second one?
That was the first one.
That was that first one.
That's the third one.
So that's the 3-year-old. It looks like he's chasing that other buck off. So it looks like, in my opinion, the doe came through. That 2-year-old, I'd call a 2-year-old,
Yeah.
could be 3. The youngest one then got on the doe. Well, this now 3-year-old middle-aged buck, he's going to go in there and cut him back off. But yeah, I don't think she was in estrus either.
I think these bucks might know each other too. I mean, it's not like they're familiar. I mean, they probably have the pecking order set. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's possible. Probably this time of the year. They're not traveling too far. Post-rut, they'll start going long distances.
They're able to tolerate each other in the same general area. And because you said they were hunting a bigger deer, right?
They were hunting a mature. I know a deer that was 5 or 6. So obviously
So-
these deer are not.
Yeah, so
that
these
old.
guys would be the more, you know, submissive kind of, you know, they could still be close to, they're breaking up, but they're not out to kill each other. Like if, you know, 2 big bucks like the one they're after got in the same area and there was hot doe scent there, it would be lights out, kill each other battle for that scent of the hot doe.
Yeah.
But these guys, you know, they're not behaving that way at all.
And this is a nice buck.
Yeah, they don't seem very agitated by one another.
They don't, do they, at all? Even with that doe coming through.
Yeah, they're all just kind of. Yeah, I don't think she's in estrus.
She isn't, and I think they might know each other. They might already have a pecking order set, so they're respecting each other's, you know.
Depending on where I'm hunting and what bucks are around, this deer might be in trouble.
This deer here,
Yeah. I think he's 4, think he's a really good buck. And in some spots, that's probably the most mature buck in the area. So
Walk me through where you're aging this now. I'm horrible at aging.
my
Adrenaline gets
I
in
just
the way.
look back at visually all the 4-year-old bucks I have on camera or have seen in the wild, and that's, I don't know what it is. If it's the face, you start looking at the rack, he's throwing off little kickers, which that may or may not mean anything. The neck, it's kind of has that 2 distinct sections, so like the throat starts to get real, it's all rutted up and just a little bit wider.
You mean
through
like
that
the
section.
throat, like you can kind of see like a line, like the
Yeah.
throat gets thicker?
Yeah, and you don't normally see that until at least they're 3.
And then what about, when you're saying belly, are you talking about the way it like sags from the back corner right there?
Yeah, so
Or are you
from
looking at the ball
pretty much
around
this
the
section.
ribs?
Pretty much this section from the rib to the privates there.
Yeah,
If it were straight, like that other,
You
what
like
we
that-
call 3-year-old,
right. Or 2
it would
or
just be
whatever.
straight. And then once they start to get, 5, 6, you really start to see a distinct belly hang. And then the whole body just looks different.
And so the belly
The
hang,
back's real straight.
does the belly hang start to separate and come more forward like a pouch, or does it?
Well, we'll
Not really
fast
matter.
forward, and so I think this is a 4-year-old, so we'll kind of just look at him, pause him
Yeah.
for a second. Belly, but nothing too crazy. Thick overall. Rack is what I would think a 4-year-old would grow.
He's got the throat. He's got the stickers at the base, which tends to be an older buck.
Fast forward now to it's just all opinion. You never know, for sure, unless you have history.
Yeah, you can tell a big difference here.
3-year-old buck, I'll try to get him in the same. And it's a different angle. You're looking down on him, but there's no belly. It's just real straight through there.
He doesn't have the throat piece to him.
The neck is medium width. Rack is kind of just that typical 130-inch.
His tarsals are not big, huge, black. I mean, he's using them, but not.
And he's a good buck. He's got great genetics.
He's got a little bit of throat there, though.
But yeah, look at, there's no belly.
No, it's more straight.
Just real straight. It's a little bit of extra skin hanging there, but nothing.
Yeah, but nothing.
And then we'll go to the first buck if we can get a good shot of him. Where is he at some point? Has he ever come in? Was it early on?
Early on or on the way out?
I'll go back. There's a 4-year-old. I don't remember where we got a good shot at him. Got the 4-year-old.
Oh, that was it.
And then this is the other one. I don't know if I can do a couple frames. To me, he just looked, if his rack was gone, he looks more like a doe. So is he just less dominant or a smaller 3-year-old, or is he just a really, really nice 2-year-old? His rack's more spindly. It's a nice rack.
He's got a little bit of agitation there with the first standing up, so I don't think it's less dominant. I think it must just be physical, that he's just not that old.
Yeah, more lanky,
Yeah.
no gut, pretty standard body. Neck is a little bit swollen, but I think he's 2.
It looks like he's bristled there a little bit, so he is bristled there. Not full bristle, but he's bristled and he's seen this deer.
And you go right to that 4-year-old and it's just completely different. A lot more thickness all the way through the body.
More jiggle.
Even his head just looks bigger, bulkier. His eyes kind of sink in, and yeah, a lot of stuff there. But
So how do you go through all that when the adrenaline's racing through your mind and you know you could be pulling back on that? That's where I start to struggle.
I think you got to know what type of deer you're going to shoot before you enter the stand. And then if you see that opportunity, you need to be ready to take a shot, because there's too much going on to be indecisive and say, should I shoot him, shouldn't I shoot him? Okay, that's a shooter, and you better get ready to shoot.
See, I look at that a little bit differently. If I get in the stand and, I don't necessarily analyze the deer the way you do. I'm just thinking of it differently. But all of a sudden something happens and boom, that adrenaline just takes over. And I'm like, oh, If I'm that excited and I go through the entire process of assessing the situation, pulling back and shooting that deer, none of that should matter. It could be a 2.5-year-old deer. And you did what you should have done, because that's what hunting is. That doesn't mean I don't want to kill a 230-inch deer, don't get me wrong. But I just think of it differently. And everybody is, just because you're so methodical about the way you think and your experiences, kind of relate to that. I think a little bit different, and Chris is probably thinking even different than that. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. You know what I mean? How do you feel about this? Would you have shot any of them deer? Can you imagine the adrenaline? Just put yourself in there, the adrenaline running. What would you have done?
Been trying to just sort through what's going on in general. Because I don't have the familiarity and the ability to just see something and break it down like, oh, it's this, this, and that. Like, it takes me some time to actually think through what's going on. So probably be a little overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. and any time I've ever been in these situations where that first doe comes into estrus and all the bucks start coming around and it's like a frenzy around me, that never, ever. I'll relive that for the rest of my life. And this is that scenario. I'll never, ever forget the details of that day. And it's happened many times. What I would do in a situation like this from a communication perspective would be to create the scenario of bucks competing over a hot doe. And then put in their mind, there is a hot doe here. Oh, there's bucks there on that hot doe. So it'd actually be pretty boisterous, is what you would be doing, I would be doing quite a bit of communicating, as long as there wasn't a lot of movement going on. You know what I mean? So, doe and ester, whatever you're going to do there, and then, get that buck chaser and just think how frustrated he is. You know what I'm saying? And then even, just mad. Just things that you've seen in this. This is gold, man. This is gold. You experience this and you now become a way better hunter than you were before you experienced it. No matter whether you screwed up, get a buck, don't get a buck, whatever, this is good stuff.
Yeah, if I'm going into the scenario and I kind of go back to just understanding the herd structure and how old the bucks are in the area, if I shot, I would, depending on if it was a high pressure, not a lot of old mature bucks, and that 4-year-old came in, I'd probably shoot him, and then the hunt would be over. It would have been a great morning. Pack up and leave. If not, because if I were to pass all these deer up, thinking that there's something bigger, and then I sit all day long and that's the most mature buck in the area, I basically wasted 8 hours of my day. So instead of doing that, if you can understand, like I said, set the goals, make a decision, and then just stick with it based on what you know about the deer. If I were to pass all these deer up because there's another old, more mature buck in the area, I would stick it out because that an estrus doe came through here. He's probably with the estrus doe if he's the most mature buck, or he's going to come through at some point, break off, and maybe check out all these same scent trails and give you an opportunity. So I would stick it out in that scenario, and I'd do quite a bit of calling every hour. I'd probably do some doe estrus bleats followed by some contact grunts, buck grunts, and maybe even do some rattling. You just had 3 bucks come in, a lot of posturing, so I think rattling would be pretty good right now still for another couple days before they completely lock down, and those are kind of the scenarios that would happen if this were me in the stand. But I think that was a pretty nice buck.
Well, see, here's the thing, though. What would you have done if all of a sudden this happened to you? Would you be tagged out? Or out of arrows?
Or would you have shot this one here?
It would have been tempting.
You might have shot him, and that doesn't matter, So
that was the best shot opportunity.
Oh, it was the best shot opportunity. I mean, look at that thing,
The 4-year-old didn't really come in too much. He just kind of came in, skirted by, and was out.
So yeah, if you couldn't age the deer real quickly, obviously this one gave you a 15-yard broadside shot and big white rack coming in.
I think what we should and shouldn't do, and what we would and wouldn't do, it's going to vary from person to person. You know, I mean, where are you with your mind? Where, you know, what's your decision? You know, where are you at? If this is Minnesota, I'm definitely shooting one of them deer. Okay. If this is Iowa and I know there's a bigger buck like these guys are at, especially if I don't live there and I only get to hunt there once every gazillion years, I'm definitely waiting. You know what I'm saying? But that's just me. You know, I'm not afraid to shoot a 3.5 to 4.5 year old deer. I've shot lots of 3.5 year old. I've shot a lot of 2.5 year old. I've shot 1.5 year old deer throughout all the times I've been hunting. Now, it just depends for me. I know, I mean, I'm not that picky because I don't hunt that much as I used to.
Yeah, and I get a little bit caught up in age and more on the management side of things, trying to target the oldest buck because that's just what I like to do. But yeah, if you go into it with a goal though, whether it's just, you know, I see a deer and it's legal and it gets me excited and I want to shoot it, then at least you have that goal heading in to where you're going to be efficient when the opportunity comes. Whereas if you don't have a goal at all, then you're going in there and, you know, your emotions take over. And when did I pull back? And when, you know, is this, and there's too many questions where you just have to, you know, you practice all summer with your bow. So you know that's dialed in. You got all your anchor points and everything kind of mentally ready. So if the opportunity comes, it's probably going to happen once. We could walk through this buck coming in and just see how we would take a shot. But just if you're ready to take a shot on whatever animal it is, you're going to be way more efficient if you can make that decision as they're walking in than waiting until they get to that window and then trying to figure out either do I pull back or what, you know, what happens. So I guess that's kind of my mindset, regardless of what you want to shoot, just at least make that decision before it happens.
Yeah, and
so I would have pulled back on this deer already, knowing that my window was coming up. I'd be pulled back and I would have stopped him there, and it would have been over.
yeah.
If I wasn't sure and I tried to pull back when he's in the window, and then he looks up, and then emotions take over, and you try to shoot fast, and you hit a shoulder, or you know, bad things just happen.
I think I remember that experience before with you when I was filming.
I think I know what that's all about when you're not ready.
That's how you learn. That's how you get better. And then back to one more point is, if you make a snap judgment, I'm going to shoot a deer, I'm going to shoot one of these deer, and you go through the process and it happens, and you get that deer down, and oh, it's only a 3.5 year old, or only it's a 2.5 year old. Don't ever let that take you down. You know what I'm saying? Because if you went through that experience and it was all positive, you made the decision, that was the right decision. Never, ever shame yourself. You know what I mean? Don't ever shame yourself. This is not a competition.
And you're taking a life. You don't want to.
It's an experience. I mean, that's what it's all about. Yeah. Keep it positive. Don't need to make excuses for what you shoot, ever.
Nope.